So it is a pleasure to give now the floor to Ms. Mechild Rosler. Since 2015, she is director of the World Heritage Center at UNESCO and co-chair of the International Expert Group UNESCO, ICOMOS, and IPCC. And she is an expert with an extensive experience in both cultural and natural heritage and history of planning.
We therefore wholeheartedly welcome today's event, and I much look forward to hearing from our panelists and case studies aimed at exploring the strategies and actions for increased resilience of cultural heritage. And with this, I would like to turn over immediately to May Kassar from University College London, our first panelist. Thank you.
Thank you, Mechild, and thank you for the invitation to speak at this important initiative by the Italian presidency of the G20. My talk aims to show how historic buildings have survived by working with the climate rather than when we attempt to control the environment at any cost, and that the link between low energy use in historic buildings and environmental sustainability is inherently strong and can inform wider climate change policies on mitigation and adaptation. But as with all principled stands, this approach is not straightforward or simple. Market failure in key areas, which I will outline now, suggests the need for policy interventions. My starting position is that cultural heritage endures because it is situated within a community, a society, and does not stand alone. Therefore, while we have a duty to protect cultural heritage from the impact of climate change, cultural heritage managers, policymakers, and indeed the public have a duty to ensure that cultural heritage helps, where it can, to alleviate climate change impacts on the planet. We need a balanced relationship among people, patrimony, and planet, and I will return to the policy intervention we need under each of these points. My second point is that historic buildings learn, and they can teach us through embedded, intangible skills and knowledge how to respond to the climate emergency, in the way we construct our future buildings and cities, and in the way we can live more in tune with the planet, more environmental sustainably. My third and final point is that we urgently need policies that redress the balance between our dependence on fossil fuels to drive our environmental control systems for the protection of cultural heritage and the urgency to protect the planet from harmful emissions of greenhouse gases. This is a double standard that we can no longer sustain. We cannot justify the continued dependence on fossil fuels to provide fully controlled environments, even if it means that in the short term, some cultural assets might be lost. While we weigh up the significance of our decisions, it is our responsibility to diversify our energy sources. Otherwise, we are colluding in the destruction of our planet and cultural heritage elsewhere, for example, coastal sites battered by storms, such as the Skara Brae Neolithic settlement in Scotland, or whalers' settlements in Herschel Island in the Yukon in Canada, with the loss of Arctic ice, will continue to be lost. While our energy efficiency measures may appear to make only a small contribution compared to the size of the global challenges we face, and we might ask what significant impact will limiting our use of exacting fossil fuel-driven air conditioning systems would have compared to the impact of other industries on the planet, yet we cannot avoid answering the future question, where were you and what did you do in the time of crisis? Going back to my starting position that cultural heritage is living and human and that it lives within society and not outside it, we need policy interventions that address three challenges around people, patrimony, and planet. Firstly, people. To understand and manage energy flows in historic buildings, one needs to understand and engage with the scientific evidence. This means putting heritage scientists at the heart of decision-making, just as we have seen health scientists at the heart of policy-making in the current pandemic. Secondly, patrimony. To understand how historic buildings can perform without relying on extensive engineering systems, one needs to understand the interaction between the climate and the building fabric, which acts as a multiple filter for air, light, and pollution, as well as providing access to people, including visitors. This means combining building pathology data and construction history data to develop repositories of multicultural cross-disciplinary case studies to demonstrate the historic resilience of different building typologies to the climate and to enable the most useful information to be extracted for future heritage to contribute to the green transformation and transition. The market has failed to emerge from its disciplinary silos to create these repositories, and so policy interventions are necessary. Thirdly, planet. The priority of institutions must now be environmental sustainability. There is no longer any place for, and neither should there be, any tolerance of environmental double standards that contribute to the destruction of the planet in the name of heritage protection. I first highlighted this contradiction 26 years ago. I did not expect to be making the same case now, citing market failure. This means exhorting policymakers to act to ensure that the use of fossil fuels for heritage conservation is phased out within this decade and replaced by renewable forms of energy in the name of environmental sustainability. While the G20 countries have experts, advanced technologies from wearable sensors to smartphones and satellites, and a growing number of citizen scientists, they are weakly connected and widely dispersed. Here, policymakers can add value by intervening where there is market failure, just as I have described. Fundamentally, we require strategies that lift all barriers that hinder data and knowledge sharing in order to promote strong cooperation among cultural and heritage organizations, research institutions and universities, and NGOs and community-based organizations for the common good. Thank you.